Hey there, and welcome to this week's From the Vault episode from the Magdalen House podcast. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Dallas, Texas, and known affectionately by many as Maggies. Every first and third Wednesday, we bring you a new release. In our From the Vault episodes, we share past podcast releases from our 3 different podcast series, ReoverED, Recovered Interviews with Alcoholics, and Hope for the Family. Our podcasts aim to connect, inspire, and educate alcoholics, loved ones, and the community to the Magdalen House and the services we offer. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for listening.
Hi, guys. My name is Lisa, and I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Hi, Lisa.
Hello, you guys. My sobriety date is June 2nd of 2007. And so I would like to introduce my cohort today, and then we're going to talk about what we're doing today. So, Lydia.
Hi, my name's Lydia, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety day is July 20th, 2007, and I'm happy to be here.
Yay. We didn't realize that our birthdays were a month apart until like a week ago. But
Class of 07.
Yeah. 06 was not a great year for us. But yeah. All right. So today, the workshop that Lydia and I are going to do for you guys is on chapter 3, more about alcoholism. And I have to tell you, I first met Lydia. She came to the agency to kind of see what we were all about. And it was probably a year and a half ago, and we bonded immediately. We bonded immediately over the love of the program, the love of Big Book, and we bonded because we love helping other women and showing other women what it looks like to be on the other side and how beautiful it is. And so Lydia and I came up with this fun idea that we would do a workshop together. And so and then how about this chapter? Like, we get so blessed to get this chapter. So Lydia and I talked earlier this past week, and what we do usually in these workshops is we read through the book. And then we'll stop, or Lydia will stop me. I'm going to do the reading and Lydia's going to do the commenting. And so I'm going to read through. I'll do some sporadic commenting too. We're going to read through the chapter all the way to page 44. Now, in the interest of time, we're going to see how the time clock goes because I'm the timekeeper. And so if we have time, it looks like we're getting some of the stuff, the stories finished early, then we'll stop for maybe some Q&A or a restroom break or something like that. But I want to start by saying this chapter is the most referred to chapter. And if you go and look at the rest of the book all the way to 164, they talk about more about alcoholism, more about alcoholism, they always refer us back to this chapter when if there's any question about a step 1 experience. And I think the reason, this is my opinion, is because the stories are in here. The stories, if you guys, like, if you've been in AA for a while, you know that the speakers, like the story speakers, are really awesome. I love story speakers. And when I was first sober, my sponsor told me to go to every story speaker that you can, because it really makes it personal. It personifies the alcoholism and the disease. And so this chapter is all about the story. So Bill's laid out, the first 100 laid out the problem, and they've laid out the supportive evidence with their own experiences. And now they're going to lay out 3 specific stories: Jim, the jaywalker, and Fred. And it's really about, can you identify with some of the circumstances around what happened before the first drink, and then what happened, and then what they're like now. So with that, I'm going to stop. Lydia, do you have anything to add to that before we I start to read?
I do. Something just popped into my head that
Yes.
that my sponsor always told me, especially in the beginning, to look for also the similarities in the feelings. So like, because I would go through when reading stories and say, well, that never happened to me. I never went to jail. I never got a DUI, whatever. And so that was my disease talking, right? So then when I looked at the similarities in myself and the feelings that were told in the book, that helped a lot for me. So just want to say that.
I love that. And not the circumstances or the details, but That's so true.
Too, but yeah, feelings, like the feelings that they had.
Like humiliation and all the
Yes.
things that they talk about. Yes, because the humiliation doesn't matter. That's so good. I love that. Love that. All right, so here we go. So Lydia, just stop me if you want to say anything. Just please, and don't hold up your hand because I'm looking down. So just
So just interrupt you.
Interrupt me, please. I interrupt all the time, everybody else. So it's really good to interrupt me. All right, chapter 3, more about alcoholism. Most of us have been unwilling to admit that we are real alcoholics. No person likes to think that he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove that we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing, and many pursue it to the gates of insanity or death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say what I have highlighted up here is that for the first sentence, most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. My experience with that was I never admitted it until I came to the program, but I kind of knew in my deep in my tummy, like that gut feeling, like, yeah, this is not normal. And I think that we have an allergy I have written here on that refer back to page 24. If you go to the previous chapter, and it talks about the allergy, the allergy of the body is that we cannot control it. Like once you take a drink, and let me clarify, just in my personal experience, there were times I had one drink, and my alcoholism when I first came to the program was like, yeah, but what about that one time that you went, to Mother's Day with your mom and you only had one glass of wine, right? And it held on to that like crazy. So what I did in that experience is I just kept coming back, right? I just kept coming back. I kept having an open mind, being open-minded and willing and being honest. And being honest about my doubts, I think was really helpful for me to say that out loud to other alcoholics. Yeah, but what about this one time, And they said, just keep coming back. Just keep coming back. That's what I did. Anyway, go ahead, Lisa.
Love that. One thing that I want to say, 2 words in this paragraph is abnormal drinker. I always thought I was an abnormal person. And what they make it really clear here is that I am a normal person, whatever normal looks like. I can be abnormal because of my personality, but I am not an abnormal person. I'm an abnormal drinker. This is not a behavior problem. It's a disease. Mm-hmm. So I just love that. It just reinforces that throughout the whole. I thought I was a loser. So, all right. Next paragraph. This is a really good one. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people or presently maybe has to be smashed. I'm going to read the second paragraph too, because this is a good one. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, and usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. We are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better.
Yeah. And I have that.
Wow.
We get worse, never better. And, you'll hear that all the time. Incomprehensible demoralization. I can relate to that. I, like you, Lisa, felt like there is something wrong with me. Another morning went by, came where I hadn't slept the night before, and I would hear my neighbor going to work. He was a lawyer, normal person, not an alcoholic. And I just think that I will never forget, 13 years later, that feeling of hearing him and go, I did it again. I couldn't control and manage my drinking and I know it's an outside issue, but my drug use and it felt awful. And I have news, like, you don't have to feel like that ever again. And I have not ever felt like that again since I got sober. And that is such a blessing. But yeah, the incomprehensible demoralization. And it's basically the first step where you go, yeah, you surrender to that fact. Like,
Yes.
that you have no control over the drink, right? Like it has control over you. And I think everybody has their own path and everybody has kind of their own way of coming to that conclusion. And it looks different for everybody.
I love that so much. I think that what they've done to page 30 is they've given us supportive evidence around the disease, the mind and the body, just like Lydia was saying. So we had to fully concede based on our experience and the knowledge that they've given us. But the other thing that it talks about too is that we're never going to regain control. That an alcoholic, once a real alcoholic, once you realize that you have this allergy, because that's why I'm never going to be cured, is because of the allergy. God can change my mind part. But and that's why it gets worse, never better. My body gets older. All these things are contributing to why it's a progressive illness. And the other thing I just want to say too, and I'll shut up about this, is the pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization is not me taking my clothes off, or me, Lydia just said it so beautifully. It is me lying to myself one more time and waking up. That's the feeling that we all have, not about the jail or what I do with my kids or all that. The pitiful, that's what we have in common. If we're talking about a common problem and a common solution, we all have that feeling, whatever the circumstances get us there. My just head exploded when you said that earlier. So I'm going to talk about that a lot, I'm sure. It's so good. All right. Okay. We are like men who've lost their legs. They never grow new ones. Neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which makes alcoholics of our kind like other men. We have tried every imaginable remedy, and in some instances, there's been brief recovery, followed always by a still worse relapse. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there's no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. I'm going to say that again. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there's no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Science may yet one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet. Mm-hmm. Anything you want to say about that before I go on?
No, I just love that line. And sometimes, so I live in Los Angeles, and sometimes they'll read this paragraph at the beginning of meetings. And it's always like, I'll always remember that you can't grow new legs. Once you're a pickle, you can't go back to a cucumber, like mm-hmm. it's a done deal. And I will say that if you're new and you're having a hard time with that concept, just take it one day at a time. Don't worry about the rest of your life. Don't worry how you're going to do this sober, how you're going to do that. So like, just do it literally how they say it, one day at a time. I still live my life like that, and it's helpful. It's a way, it really is a design for living. So yeah, I think, once you get there, you can't really go back. And for me, my experience was, who wants to? Like, I don't eat ice cream like a normal person, right? That's not fun. I don't have a scoop. I have the whole pint. It's like, I can still see that like in myself, in my personality. And I never found it fun to control and manage my drinking. So I never tried. I was just like, this is just how I drink. So anyway, that's all.
Oh, I love that. I think, I love the fact that once we've succumbed to step one, the allergy and the mind, mind and the body, you can never go back. You are not you are an alcoholic. So the other questions that are you done for good and all, are you willing to go to any length, are different questions. Mm-hmm. Just because I've been diagnosed, or I've diagnosed myself as an alcoholic, doesn't mean I'm ready to go through the steps. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean I'm ready to go through the program. There's some other stuff that has to happen. And they're going to talk about that in this chapter. Okay, despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe they are in that class. That's what I just said. That's perfect. I didn't realize that they were going to say that. By every form of self-deception and experimentation, they will try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule, therefore non-alcoholic. If anyone who's showing inability to control his drinking can do the right about face and drink like a gentleman, our hats are off to him. Heaven knows we have tried hard enough and long enough to drink like other people. Here's some of the methods we tried. Drinking beer only, limiting the number of drinks, never drinking alone, never drinking in the morning, drinking only at home, never drinking in the house, never having it in the house, never drinking during business hours, drinking only at parties, switching from scotch to brandy, drinking only natural wines, agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job, taking a trip, not taking a trip, swearing off forever, with and without a solemn oath, taking more physical exercise, reading inspirational books, going to health farms, sanitariums, accepting voluntary commitment to asylums, and we could increase this list ad infinitum. All right. Anything there that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I just think I remember when I read this chapter with my first sponsor, she had me go through that chapter and underline anything I had done throughout my drinking career. And so I highlighted, and she said, if you underline just one thing, alcohol is a problem for you. Because normal people, non-alcoholics, normies, right? They don't do that. They don't have to do that. So that really struck me. So yes, I tried many things. And, it's things like that are important for me to remember today. Like I remember before I got sober, I lived in Colorado and they didn't sell, I don't know if in Texas, but they didn't sell liquor on Sundays. And so I would always stock up because God forbid, I don't have alcohol in my house to get me through every night. And I remember one week I purposely didn't buy anything because I was like, I'm normal. I'm going to be a normal person tonight. I'm going to try to control and manage my drinking. And I found myself that night rolled around and it was Sunday night and I found myself drinking vermouth because that was literally the only kind of alcohol I had in my house. I mean, that's not normal, right? Like but those are the kinds of things you want to think about when you're reading this chapter. What did I do to try to control and manage my drinking, to try to be like normal people, like a normie, and not admit to myself that I'm an alcoholic. So I just think that's important to go through and kind of reiterate that to yourself and remember that.
I think so too. I think too, a lot of the women who come through Maggie's, they get step one. Like they literally they haven't had step one experience, but they get the knowledge of step one, just like it talks about in that first paragraph here, but they have to go out and experiment some more. Is that what that blonde chick said? I don't believe her. And so that's really good though. If you have any lurking notion to go out, that's why it tells us, well, it's about to tell us right now exactly what to do. Okay. We do not like to pronounce any individual as alcoholic, but you can quickly diagnose yourself. Step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. Try to drink and stop abruptly. Try it more than once. It will not take long for you to decide if you're honest with yourself about it. It may be worth a bad case of jitters to get a full knowledge of your condition. There's no way of proving it, but we believe that early in our drinking careers, most of us could have stopped drinking. But the difficulty is that few alcoholics have enough desire to stop while there's still yet time. We've heard of a few instances where people who showed definite signs of alcoholism were able to stop for a long period of time because of an overpowering desire to do so. Here is one. All right, before we get into the man of 30, I love that. So that's the allergy test, we call it. And this is really blasphemous in some AA meetings when they're like, well, I'm not sure. Instead of saying, keep coming back, which I think you definitely should, but you also have to drink. You also have to know that alcohol is you have this allergy and that you have to have alcohol. And so that really is important. That's an allergy. It's really, really important for us to know that we're done, that we're sure. Mm-hmm. There's no other solution. Lydia, did you want to talk about that before we get into the story?
Yeah, I just have highlighted, but the difficulty is that few alcoholics have enough desire to stop while there is yet time. And I think that was definitely my experience with it was that, at first it's fun and then it's fun with problems and then it became all problems. Right. And so if I look back, I think, when I was having fun and I was a potential alcoholic, I didn't want to stop. It had to get to the point where, you got to really get to a point of feeling, like Lisa said, in your innermost self, like this thing has got me and I don't know what to do. And was my experience when I came to the program. So.
Awesome. Okay, let's get into the man of 30. A man of 30 was doing a great deal of spree drinking. He was nervous in the morning after these bouts and quieted himself with more liquor. He was ambitious to succeed in business, but saw that he could get nowhere if he drank at all. Once he started, he had no control whatever. He made up his mind that until he was successful in business and had retired, he would not touch another drop. An exceptional man, he remained bone dry for 25 years and retired at the age of 55 after a successful and happy business career. He then fell to the victim. He fell then to the victim to the belief, which practically every alcoholic has, that his long period of sobriety and self-discipline had qualified him to drink as other men. Out came his carpet slippers and a bottle. In 2 months, he was in a hospital, puzzled and humiliated. He tried to regulate his drinking for a while, making several attempts in the trips to the hospital in the meantime. Then, gathering all of his forces, he attempted to stop altogether and found he could not. Every means of solving his problem, which money could buy, was at his disposal. Every attempt failed. Though a robust man at retirement, he went to pieces quickly and was dead within 4 years. This case contains a powerful lesson. Most of us believe that if we remain sober for a long stretch, we could therefore drink normally. But here's a man who at 55 years old found he had just left where he just left off at 30. We have seen the truth demonstrated again and again. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Commencing to drink after a period of sobriety, we're in a short time as bad as ever. If we are planning to stop drinking, there must be no reservation of any kind, nor lurking notion that someday we will be immune from alcohol.
Yeah, I like this
It's good
paragraph, because it makes me think of, I was 26 when I got sober. So I still some days can think, well, I was a different person then, right? Like, well, I don't know. I had different, I'm now, a mom, I have kids, whatever. But it's reading the book like this that helps, that reminds me, look at this guy. He didn't drink for, from 30, he stopped at 30 and he didn't drink until 55 years old. And then it was like, bam, right there.
I love the fact that people say, well, maybe he wasn't an alcoholic, and it doesn't matter because he had a lurking notion, because he said he had the control part, the problem with the body. But what he said was there was criteria. I'm not going to drink now, but I'm going to drink later. So he didn't stop for good and all. He said he was going to pick it up later. So he didn't have the mind part yet, because he hadn't said he was going to stop forever. So I think that's a really great depth or story about how we can convince ourselves of our minds can, of so many things. And that he really believed that, and it killed him. 4 years, and he was dead. All right. Young people may be encouraged by this man's experience to think that they can stop as he did on their own willpower. We doubt if many of them can do it, because none of them really want to stop. Hardly any of them, because of the peculiar mental twist already acquired, will find he can win out. Several of our crowd, men of 30 or less, have been drinking only a few years, but they found themselves as helpless as those have been drinking for 20. To be gravely affected, one does not necessarily have to drink a long period of time or take the quantities that some of us have had. This is particularly true of women. Potential female alcoholics often turn into the real thing and are gone beyond recall in a few years. Certain drinkers who would be greatly insulted if called alcoholics are astonished at their inability to stop. We who are familiar with the symptoms see large numbers of potential alcoholics, especially among young people everywhere, but try and get them to see it, !
Yeah, I think that goes back to what I was saying a little earlier, that I drank only for 10 years, and it took me down to my knees. So that was my experience with that.
I think so. It's not about time or quantity. It's about the allergy and the obsession. So I always thought it was about quantity. And my son, my 20-year-old, just got, he celebrated a year of sobriety in May. So it affects all of us at different times, All right. As we look back, we feel we've gone on drinking many years beyond the point where we could quit on our own willpower. If anyone questions whether he has entered into this dangerous area, let him try leaving liquor alone for 1 year. If he is a real alcoholic, very far advanced, there is scant chance of his success. In the early days of our drinking, we occasionally remain sober for a year or more, becoming serious drinkers again later. Though you may be able to stop for a considerable period of time, you may yet be a potential alcoholic. We think few to whom this book will appeal can stay dry for anything like a year. Some will be drunk the day after making the resolutions, and most of them will be drunk within a few weeks.
Yeah, I think I never wanted to not drink for a year, and I think that it's important to remember that I know I keep bringing up normies, but just that that like people who are not alcoholics, that's not even a problem for them. Like if they had to say, okay, don't drink for a year, they go, okay, fine, no big deal, right? So I think that's a good barometer when you're questioning whether you're an alcoholic or not.
That's the obsession test, you guys. The allergy test was on 31. This is the obsession test. Can I say I'm not going to drink and leave it alone? It still makes my palms sweat a little bit when I think I couldn't drink for a whole year if I was drinking. It's crazy how that still works. Yeah. All right. For those who are unable to drink moderately, the question is how to stop altogether. We are assuming, of course, that the reader desires to stop. Whether such a person can quit upon a non-spiritual basis depends on the extent to which he has already lost the power to choose whether he will drink or not. Many of us felt that we had plenty of character. There was a tremendous urge to cease forever, yet we found it impossible. This is the baffling feature of alcoholism as we know it. This utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish. Oh my gosh, underline that in a sentence. Highlight it, it's really good.
Cunning, baffling, and powerful.
No matter how great the necessity or the wish. All right, then how shall we help the readers to determine to their own satisfaction whether they are one of us? The experiment of quitting for a period of time will be helpful, but we think we can render an even greater service to alcoholic sufferers and perhaps to the medical fraternity. So we shall describe some of the mental states which precede a relapse into drinking, for obviously it is the crux of the problem. What sort of thinking dominates an alcoholic who repeats time after time the desperate experiment of the first drink? Friends who have reasoned with him after a spree, which have brought him to the point of divorce or bankruptcy, are mystified when he walks directly into a saloon. Why does he? Of what is he thinking? All right. So anything you want to talk about, Lydia, before I get into Jim, because Jim is going to be a couple of pages.
No, let's go ahead to Jim.
Okay. Our first example is a friend we call Jim. This man has a charming wife and family. He inherited a lucrative automobile agency, and he had a commendable World War record. He is a good salesman, and everybody likes him. He is an intelligent man, normal so far as we can see, except for a nervous disposition. He did no drinking until he was 35. In a few years, he became so violent when intoxicated that he had to be committed. On leaving the asylum, he came into contact with us. We told him what we knew of alcoholism and the answer we found. He made a beginning. His family was reassembled and he began to work as a salesman for the business he had lost through drinking. All went well for a time, but he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. Underline that.
Yeah,
His
I have
consternation. Yeah.
I have that underlined too. He failed to enlarge his spiritual life, which I had page 14 written next to it. And I went back and looked at page 14, and it was really about step 12 and helping and being of service and helping other alcoholics.
It is. It is Bill's step 12.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because right before that, you guys, it said something about how he went to work for the business that he lost and he was violent. But the key to that whole thing is not the resentment. It's he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. I'm going to get into resentment. I'm still going to get pissed off about things. But he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. That's really a hidden little sentence in there. To his consternation, he found himself drunk half a dozen times in rapid succession. On each of these occasions, we worked with him, reviewing carefully what had happened. He agreed that he was a real alcoholic and in a serious condition. He knew he faced another trip to the asylum if he went on. Moreover, he would lose his family for whom he had a deep affection. Yet he got drunk again. We asked him to tell us exactly what had happened, and so this is his story. I came to work on Tuesday morning, and I remember I felt irritated that I had to be a salesman for a concern I'd once owned. I had a few words with the boss, but nothing serious. Then I decided to drive into the country and see one of my prospects for a car. On the way, I felt hungry, so I stopped at a roadside place where they had a bar. I had no intention of drinking. I just thought I would get a sandwich. I also had the notion that I might find a customer for a car at this place, which I was familiar for. I had been going to it for years. I had eaten there many times during the months which I was sober. I sat down at a table and ordered a sandwich and a glass of milk. Still no thought of drinking. I ordered another sandwich and decided to have another glass of milk. Suddenly, the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it couldn't hurt me on a full stomach. I ordered a whiskey and poured it into the milk. I vaguely sensed that I was not being any too smart, but I felt reassured that I was taking the whiskey on a full stomach. The experiment went so well that I ordered another whiskey and poured it into the milk. That didn't seem to bother me, so I tried another. Thus started one more journey to the asylum for Jim. Here was the threat of commitment, the loss of family and position, to say nothing of that intense mental and physical suffering which drinking always caused him. He had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic, yet all reasons for drinking were easily pushed aside in favor of the foolish idea that he could take whiskey if he only mixed it with milk. Whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. How could a lack of such proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else?
Yeah, what comes to my mind is self-knowledge availed us nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can know all you want about being that you're an alcoholic, that you can't control it, but the key is in perfecting and enlarging that spiritual life. That's how you can, because there's no mental defense against when you're in the moment. That's what I was and still remain vigilant to this day of knowing that it can sneak up on you and it can just, you can go, okay, maybe I could, drink like the other moms, we go, whatever, hang out with them. I mean, and it's just like, I'm vigilant about that still. I think that's really important because there's no mental defense. And so that's why you work the steps. That's why you have a program.
Exactly. That's why we do 10, 11, and 12, because it builds a foundation for when that time comes, when the suddenly, because I always thought it would be like, oh, it's going to be bad. Like it's going to hit me. I'm going to be sad. But this is a perfect example of suddenly, and it sounded like a great idea. Mm-hmm. I hadn't had a drink in a while. It doesn't ever come to us as a bad idea. It comes to us as a great idea. And I told them I wasn't an alcoholic. It's been 3 months, or 3 days. I just love this. He just had a lurking notion and he didn't enlarge his spiritual life. It's really simple.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other thing too, about the word insanity, the inability to see my own truth. That's what this teacher taught me one time, or this mentor I had taught me one time. And I love that step 2 is not about the insanity of my life. It's literally the insanity around, I absolutely cannot see my truth. And my truth is that I can't drink normally and I can't not drink.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool.
And doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. I'm sure we've all heard that one, right? Is also what I think of when I think of the insanity. Mm-hmm. I have highlighted plain insanity. It's like, so many times he had a drink and had the consequences of that, yet there still wasn't that insanity, mm-hmm. thinking it's going to be different this time. No problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not that he doesn't remember the consequences. I remembered them.
Yeah.
It just didn't come into enough force, like it talks about on page 24, that's going to stop me from taking the first drink. All right, I love this. All right. Okay. You may think this an extreme case. To us, it is not far-fetched. For this kind of thinking has been the characteristic of every single one of us. Every single one of us. We have sometimes reflected more than Jim did upon the consequences, but there's always the curious mental phenomenon that parallel with our sound reasoning, there inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking the first drink. Our sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. The insane idea won out. Next day, we would ask ourselves in all earnestness and sincerity, how could it have happened? I just want to stop here. One thing just occurred to me. People say like, oh, I relapsed and I relapsed for 2 years. okay, you're actively drinking for 2 years. The relapse happens before you take the drink, you guys. When you take a drink, you're in active alcoholism. The relapse happens when I'm not enlarging my spiritual life and I'm blowing it off and not calling my sponsor, doing something else because something is more important. That's what relapse looks like. I think it's when I'm drinking, but no, that's active drinking. The relapse happens when I parallel with my sound reasoning, this trivial idea wins out. Okay, in some circumstances, we've gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. But even this type of beginning, we are obliged to admit that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of what always happened. We now see that we can begin to drink deliberately instead of casually. There's little serious or effective thought during the period of premeditation of what the terrific consequences might be. I cannot think through the drink.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do that.
Yeah, I have.
Doesn't sound like a good idea.
I have written there that it says I have triggers, and I, underline justified, and I have NAWDJ, which stands for nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy. That we need to look for those feelings and be conscientious of them because they can push you into having another drink. So,
but see, I have a toolkit too, though. I know what to do when I have those, because that's what the toolkit's all about, is pausing and praying and calling my sponsor, going out and helping a woman, because I don't just let them. I have tools that I can take it to the next step, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Our behavior is absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink is that as an individual with a passion for, say, jaywalking. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years despite the friendly warnings. Up to this point, you would label him as a foolish chap having queer ideas of fun. Luck then deserts him, and he is slightly injured several times in succession. You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. Presently, he is hit again, and this time has a fractured skull. Within a week of leaving the hospital, a fast-moving trolley breaks his arm. He tells you he's decided to stop jaywalking for good, but in a few weeks, he breaks both legs. On through the years, this conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful or to keep off the streets altogether. Finally, he can no longer work, his wife gets a divorce, and he is held up to ridicule. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. He shuts himself in an asylum, hoping to mend his ways. But the day he gets out, he races in front of a fire engine, which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? You may think our illustration is too ridiculous, but is it? We who have been through the ringer have to admit that if we substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. However intelligent we may be in other respects, where alcohol has been involved, we've been strangely insane. It's strong language, but isn't it true?
Yeah, I think the jaywalker really demonstrates the absurdity of the alcoholism and the thinking, and how you can be PhD, at MIT, and still you can't reason your way out of the alcoholism, out of the obsession.
Completely agree. This is all about the obsession. So it looks like we have like 5 or 6 minutes that I'm running through this pretty quickly. Does anybody have any questions or anything that you would like to talk about up to this point? Anybody? Any questions?
No, ma'am.
I don't think so.
No. All right. We're going to get to my favorite story in the whole book. All right. Some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply. We admit we have some of these symptoms, but we have not gone to the extreme that you fellows did, nor are we likely to. For we understand ourselves so well after what you've told us that such things cannot happen. We have not lost everything in life through drinking, and we certainly do not intend to. Thank you for the information. That may be true of certain non-alcoholic people who, through drinking foolishly and heavily at the present time, are able to stop or moderate because their brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were. But the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly any an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. This is the point we wish to emphasize and re-emphasize to smash home upon our alcoholic readers as been revealed to us out of bitter experience. So let us take another illustration. Anything there, Lydia?
No, just like what I said earlier, self-knowledge is meaningless in our situation, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Self-knowledge to me gets me to the point where I can be open-minded to hearing step one and go through the rest of the work. And that's really about it. It's my experience of drinking, not self-knowledge of the steps or step knowledge of what the illness is, but how I drank. The other thing too, I love where they talk about here is bitter experience. This is not their opinion. I mean, a lot of people died to get this book written. It wasn't written like a pretty, like, this is a solution, we're going to tie a bow on it and give you guys a book. A lot of people died when they tried things that didn't work. So the bitter experiences, so we're so blessed to have this book that lays it out for us, because once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. There's no chance that I'm going to be able to go backwards. And they've laid out almost every kind of example so that what Lydia was talking about, we can all identify with and not look at the differences, but the similarities, you know. Anything else before I go into Fred? I love Fred. All right. Fred is a partner in a well-known accounting firm. His income is good and he has a fine home. He's happily married and the father of promising children of college age. He is so attractive a personality that he makes friends with everyone. If ever there was a successful businessman, it is Fred. To all appearance, he is stable, well-balanced individual, yet he is alcoholic. We first saw Fred about a year ago in the hospital when he had gone to recover from a bad case of jitters. It was his first experience of this kind, and he was much ashamed of it. Far from admitting he was alcoholic, he told himself he'd come to the hospital to rest his nerves. The doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realized. For a few days, he was depressed about his condition. He made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. Underline that. That's a beautiful statement. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so, in spite of his character and standing. Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. He was interested and conceded that he had some of the symptoms, but he was a long way from admitting that he could do nothing about it himself. He was positive that this humiliating experience, plus the knowledge he had acquired, would keep him sober for the rest of his life. Self-knowledge would fix it. All right, I'm going to stop there. Lydia, do you want to comment on anything about that?
What stuck out to me was that he says he was positive that his humiliating experience and plus the knowledge would keep him sober. And on the previous page, right down at the bottom, it says he would not accept a spiritual remedy at this point. And I think this, the spiritual remedy are the steps and working those steps. And so you can be humiliated all you want. I mean, if you're sitting here today, you've had something humiliating happen due to your drinking or drug use. I mean, I know I have many, many things, but that still wouldn't keep me from doing it all over again. And
there's the opposite side to that too, because my best friend drinks a lot. And she's had a lot of humiliating experiences where she's just done stupid things while she's drinking. And you know what she does? She cuts back. She'll have like one glass of wine for a year or do something like extreme. And she'll just quit doing that. She'll quit drinking so much and the behavior, but she's never said, I'm never going to drink again. She controls it so that she can enjoy it. And it's crazy how, anyway, I love that he's just presented here as just a normal guy. I thought alcoholics were people who lived under bridges and had, I don't know. I had a very fixed idea about what alcoholics look like because I thought I wasn't one, So I love that, especially for 1939, when it was a lot more prevalent then that, drunks had a certain persona that they would come out in a book. It was mind blowing that they would come out with a book and present a normal person, a normal guy, as a drunk.
Mhm.
And I love that.
Yeah, alcohol doesn't discriminate. I mean, there's no every shape and size and man, woman, non-binary, like everybody. It's like it can affect anybody. And I remember the first time I went, when I went to treatment, they took me to my first AA meeting, and I felt like I walked in, I was like, these are my people, because we all had come, we were rescued from this sinking ship, and we had a common solution. And a lot of that shame throughout those next few months were lifted for me, because I realized, like, you can tend to think when you're in it, I'm the only one, I'm the only one who's ever done this. I'm the only one who's ever felt this way. And what the program did for me was made me realize, oh no, I'm not the only one. And, these people get it. So
that's so true.
Really cool. A lot of people don't get, you have this fellowship of people just automatically, no matter where you are in the country or the world or anywhere. So
that's so true. I love that. All right. We heard no more from Fred for a while. One day we were told he was back in the hospital. This time he was quite shaky, and he soon indicated he was anxious to see us. The story he told us is most instructive, for here's a chap absolutely convinced he had to stop drinking, who had no excuse for drinking, who exhibited splendid judgment and determination, all of his other concerns, yet he was flat on his back nevertheless. Let him tell you about it. I was much impressed with you fellows and what you said about alcoholism, and I frankly did not believe it was possible for me to drink again. I rather appreciated your ideas about the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink, but I was confident it would not happen to me after what I had learned. I reasoned, and I've got this highlighted and underlined like 5 times. I reasoned that I was not so far advanced as most of you fellows, that I had been usually successful in licking my other personal problems, and I would therefore be successful where you men had failed. I felt I had every right to be self-confident, that it would only be a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard.
Yeah, I have highlighted, I was confident it would not happen to me after what I had learned. And then I have the word denial right next to that.
I have arrogance written next to it because my sponsor was like, really? That's like me not wanting to I didn't want to do AA because I thought it was just a cult trying to get me to Jesus. How arrogant, like, I think I know what's going to be on the other side. That's so arrogant for me.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I remember, because I was living in Dallas at the time, and I had tried everything, gone to read this book, like we talked about earlier in the chapter, every kind of other solution to try to stop drinking. And I remember I went to a therapist, and I thought, okay, well, this will fix me, a cognitive behavioral therapist, right? She'll treat my cognitive behavioral issues around drinking. And she said, have you ever considered going to AA? And I said, oh no, they talk about, that's too much God stuff. I'm not doing that. It took me a few more months, and then here I am. So yeah.
It's so cool too, how that, right? Because nothing happened at there's no bottom, right? Bill talks about it, that the bottom is complete deflation of the ego. And this is what happened to Fred. Complete deflation of his ego. His ego and arrogance was running rampant. And that's so it looks different for all of us. Lydia talked about that earlier. But when my ego is completely deflated, like I have no more ideas, I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to do the program. I'm going to listen and read, and I'm going to want what you have, because I have no ideas on my own. I'm done, because I'm done reasoning. Like I reasoned, like he's reasoning with the very mind that's trying to kill him right now. This story is just so good about arrogance and deflation of the ego. Oh my God, I love it. Okay. In this frame of mind, I went about my business, and for a time, all was well. I had no trouble refusing drinks, and began to wonder if I had not been making too hard a simple matter. Oh my God, that's so good. One day I came to Washington to present some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I had been out of town before during this particular dry spell, so there was nothing new about that. But physically, I felt fine. Neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. My business came off well. I was pleased, and I knew my partners would be too. It was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on their horizon. I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to my mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. That was all, nothing more. Okay, I gotta stop right there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can I stop you right there?
Yeah.
So I have that highlighted, the sentence in italics, or the couple sentences. And for me, what's really helped is that when I have thoughts like that, because I still have thoughts like that, it's like, I have thoughts like, wouldn't it be not, I live in California, like, I know this is outside issue, but marijuana is legal. Wouldn't it be, I know some people that can just, like your friend Lisa, who can just like eat an edible after their kids go to sleep, no big deal. I've had those thoughts where I go, oh, wouldn't that be nice? And what I do is I share that with my sponsor and with other women in the program. That takes the power out of it. You're going to have those thoughts. Like, that's totally normal. And you're going to have those thoughts at 13 years sober. I'll probably be having those thoughts if, God willing, I get to, 25, 30 years sober. Like, I will always have those thoughts, but I never keep them to myself, because I remember learning you're only as sick as your secrets. And when people say that, it means your secrets are things like, well, first of all, when you go through your inventory and keeping stuff from your sponsor, but also just stuff like that goes through your head, and if I let my ego get in the way, I would go, oh, I shouldn't be thinking that at 13 years sober. Whoa. But it's like, no, I need to maintain that humility of going, yeah, it's just as strong as it was before.
I want to go back to something that you said earlier, which I think is so cool, because his trigger thing, it was not stepping over the threshold or being around alcohol. It was arrogance and ego. And that's what this whole thing about, he didn't take care of his spiritual life. He didn't have a spiritual life, but it wasn't that he was around alcohol. That was not the problem. The problem is not that I have a full bar in my house right now. That's not it. It's I have to constantly enlarge and do this work for my spiritual life. I love that, because it talks specifically that it doesn't matter if it's alcohol there or not, because alcohol is not my problem. Mm-hmm. Okay. I ordered a cocktail with my meal, and then I ordered another cocktail. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. And when I returned to the hotel, it struck me a highball would be fine before going to bed. So I stepped into the bar and I had one. I remember having several more that night and plenty the next morning. Shadowy recollection of being in the airplane bound for New York. I don't know who that is. Okay. Bound for New York, and of finding a friendly taxi cab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. The driver escorted me for the next several days. I know little of where I went or what I said or did. Then came to the hospital with the unbearable mental and physical suffering. As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went over carefully the evening in Washington. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time, I had not thought of the consequences at all. I had commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. I now remembered that what my alcoholic friends had told me, and this is important, highlight it and underline it, how they had prophesied that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and place would come, I would drink again. They said that that though I did raise a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, just that did happen and more. For what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from the moment that I had an alcoholic mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge that I could not help in those strange mental blank spots. I had never been able to understand people who said that they had a problem that had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then, and it was a crushing blow.
And I think that by acknowledgement of this crushing blow, it prepares you for the full surrender of step one. And then once you've surrendered, then you can, that allows, for me, it allowed a little space for God to come in. I didn't, and in the beginning, I expected God to feel like this burning bush experience, like how alcohol affected me. I wanted God to affect me like that. For me, it was more like sobriety. Like, okay, it's something I had to work towards every day, by talking and having that conscious contact and praying and meditating. And, but anyway, I think what he described in this chapter is really setting you up for a full surrender, which is part of the brick foundation that you lay and build a successful sobriety on.
I love this too, because I thought that arrogance looked very different than what it really looks like. Like arrogance is like, I think I know. And I thought arrogance would make a person look like they're a terrible person, but it doesn't. Arrogance comes in so many different forms, but there's no humility in a plan. See, he had a plan and he had to go through with the plan. Like he had to try his plan. That's how he found out that he didn't work. And his ego was deflated. So I sponsor women who'll go, no, I need to do that. I need to do that. They start telling me, when they're new in sobriety, what they think that they need to do. And I'm like, well, if you think you've got a plan, then you don't need a sponsor for sure. But that's the arrogance part of it, that the ego dies hard, man. We have to arm wrestle our ego almost every day. But I love that there's really no humility in that kind of a plan. Yeah.
And I think that comes to 3 words for me. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know what's right for me. So that opens me up to becoming willing to take direction and to try something different than what I had been doing. And I don't know what's best for anybody else. I just don't know. I don't know. I'm just going to.
Oh my gosh, Lydia.
It's like that, literally that simple.
It is. That's what my sponsor, when I started doing step 2, because I thought step 2 was about God. And she said, no, it's about you think you know. And there's a lot of hope in step 2, because there's a lot of hope in I don't know, but I hope. I hope that what's working for you will work for me. But there's a lot of humility in saying, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Even when you do know, we think I love it. All right. This is my favorite part of the page right here. Okay. 2 of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I did not like so much. And then they asked me if I thought myself an alcoholic, if I were really licked this time. I had to concede to both propositions. Now he's ready here. Okay. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality, such as I exhibited in Washington, was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. Then they outlined the spiritual answer and the program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully. Though I'd only been a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw out several lifelong conceptions out the window, and that was not easy. But the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, and in fact it proved to be.
Yeah, in the previous paragraph and wherever it said hopeless in this book, I underline it and I write beyond human aid, which means no person can help me. There's no person that can do this for me.
So good.
That can make it so that I don't drink more than one. That my sponsor kept telling me that, because it really, for me, it was a spiritual solution in the steps.
Oh my gosh, I just wrote that down in my book. I love that so much, because the more hopeless you are, the better off you are.
Yeah.
This is the only disease that the worse you are, the stage 4, the more likely you have for recovery.
The more defeated you are, if you're feeling defeated today, good, because that means it sets you up to be open to really having a new experience.
That's why they grinned. They weren't laughing at him or being mean. They were happy. They're like, finally,
yeah,
you got no more ideas, The other thing I wanted to say, this is Fred's step 3 right here, because what he said was that was not easy. But the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved. He didn't say when I made up my mind to quit drinking. The process, that's his step 3 decision. He's making his mind up to go through steps 4 through 12. And that's really the decision that we're making in step 3.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. Okay. Quite as important was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all of my problems. I have since been brought into a way of living infinitely more satisfying and I hope more useful than the life I'd lived before. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could. I'm going to stop there.
Yeah. I highlighted that whole paragraph and then underlined the first, which says spiritual principles would solve all my problems. And those spiritual principles were the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous.
And it's so crazy because it doesn't say that my problems are going to go away. My problems are not going to go away.
Yeah, life happens.
Yeah, exactly. But
it continues to happen.
Oh, my word. Worse. I wish I had my problems 13 years ago that I do today. I mean, good God, we're all living in a pandemic. I mean, Lydia's got her kids home, for God's sake, homeschooling. If that's not a great excuse to drink, what is?
Yeah, my husband looked at me yesterday and he said, "This is crazy."
I can't imagine having all my 4 boys at home right now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But one day at a time, and taking that time in the morning to pray and meditate and turn it over is my solution. So.
Okay, I just gotta say, you guys are listening to what Lydia is saying, which is so beautiful, is she's not saying don't not drink one day at a time.
Yeah.
She's saying live and use the principles one day at a time. The not drinking is a byproduct of using the principles every day. That's what they're talking about with Fred here. And I love it when you say that, Lydia. It's so, because I thought that Alcoholics Anonymous was just going to help me not drink one day at a time. And that's not it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I do want to say, like in the very beginning when I was in treatment, I remember it felt so hard that I felt like I couldn't go 15 minutes without, like the cravings were so intense and so hard for me. So if that's your experience right now, it's okay. And it's going to pass, and you just keep showing up and suiting up and showing up and taking the next right action, which is just getting out of bed, making your bed, brushing your teeth, right? Like just simple things.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the hardest part for me decisions were what shirt to wear, not if I was what career I was gonna go on. I mean, it was literally I couldn't figure out what pants to put on.
Oh, I couldn't go to the grocery store without a glass of wine and some pills, and I mean, the hardest. It was like literally I could not imagine how I was going to live life without alcohol. So, yeah.
And I think one of my favorite parts of Fred's story is this: my old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. I wouldn't go back to it even if I could. I hear some women say sometimes, I wish I could go back. I don't want that life anymore. And how cool is that we can get to a place in recovery where this new life of not drinking and having this spiritual toolkit and life that we have is, I don't want to go back there. I'm reborn. Like I'd never, I heard one time in an AA meeting, I thought this woman was lying. Like I literally thought she was lying. And she said, if she could take a pill today and drink normally, this pill would cause her to drink normally, she wouldn't take the pill. And I thought she was lying. I was early in sobriety, early in recovery, and I thought she was lying. But I hadn't had enough time in recovery yet to see that helping other women and their families and this beautiful journey of spiritual bearing witness, that's the suitable substitute, right? That I wouldn't go back to my old self. I just sit at Houston's, have a glass of wine and talk bad about you like I used to. I wouldn't, why would I live on a spiritual basis? I'm a selfish asshole. you know?
Yeah, I
So-
think it's like we're awake now, right? Like before, you know, even on my best days drinking, I wasn't awake. I wasn't available and I wasn't conscious. And on this path, what I found is I want to be awake. I want to be here for all the moments, good and bad.
Mhm.
And in the beginning, I always say this in meetings, like I didn't want to be awake for any of it. So it came with time. You know, it was like all the feelings felt so big and so uncomfortable. And it was so painful. And I felt like I was living with no skin, like I was all nerves. You know, it just felt so like you had
Yeah.
taken away my solution and my, you know, my
Blanket.
blanket. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was rough, but I emerged and I made it through, and, you know, and now it's like, oh, okay, I can have all the feelings. And then now I can tell my son what I do when I have a feeling that's uncomfortable, you know, and say, yeah, that's really hard, you know, and this is what I do. Take some deep breaths, go for a walk. I don't know. I mean, just whatever. When alcohol used to be my only solution.
Oh my God. Okay. So this it's just not about sobriety. It's just so cool how it's not about sobriety. It's about recovery, and it looks very different. I think this is a great place for us to stop and ask anybody have any questions that they want to talk about with the step 3 with Fred or.
Hey, Lisa,
Hi,
we have
Lisa.
a question.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
What
Is it
is your?
Jessica? Who is that?
I'm Taylor. Taylor.
Oh, hi. Hi, Taylor.
Hi there. What does your toolkit consist of?
Well, that's 10, 11, and 12 is my
Okay,
toolkit.
never
That's
mind.
your relapse prevention program. It's real simple. They were like, you don't have to talk for 2 hours about a relapse prevention program because it's 10, 11, and 12.
Okay.
That's your toolkit. Step 10 is steps 4 through 9, all rolled into one. So that's why step 10 literally is how you deal with the outside, the difficulty, right? With the situations they talk about in the 3rd step prayer. And then 11 is my relationship with God and how I'm going to grow that personal conscious contact. And then step 12 is how I'm going to grow in my spiritual program because I'm going to share it and bear witness to other people. So 10, 11, and 12 is the toolkit. Lydia?
Awesome.
Yeah, I would agree. 10, 11, 12, clean house, get spiritually fit, get right with God, and help others.
Exactly.
Thank you.
It's real simple. We like to make it complicated, and rehabs really love to make it complicated because they make a lot of money on a big old fat relapse prevention plan. It's 10, 11, and 12.
Yeah, the relapse prevention plan is just don't, you know, and stay in the middle of the herd. Don't get picked off by being outside, you know, really throw yourself right in the middle in there and share your experience with other alcoholic women and talk about thoughts you have that come up, and then with the steps with 10, 11, 12. 10 is
Exactly.
really how I deal with things that are irking me or bothering me. It's like, okay, my sponsor's like, write a 10 step. You know, it's like little housekeeping here and there, or I can keep my house clean. And like Lisa said, 11's my favorite step. And I was the gal who said,
Yes.
yeah, they talk about God too much. No, thank you. So that came over time. And when I got thoroughly defeated, that I was willing to go, whatever. Like literally, if you wake up in the morning and you just go, whatever, that's like a prayer of surrender to me. Because it's saying to God, whatever, I'm okay. You know, I'm going to roll with it, and I'm going to turn my will over to you, and I'm going to be open to whatever your will is for me. It's like Lisa said, real simple. And then 12 is helping other alcoholics, whether that's sharing in a meeting, whether that's sponsoring other women, whether that's setting up the coffee. When I got sober, cleaning ashtrays. You can't smoke anymore in meetings, but you know, like whatever, giving your number to a newcomer, calling that newcomer, saying, how are you doing? Getting out of your own way, you know, getting out of your own head to help somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you have 6 hours, that, you know, a day sober, like you have experienced strength and hope because your tush
Yes.
is like, it doesn't have to be I always thought, oh, well, I have to know everything that I'm talking about. No, your only experience, you can bring your experience and say this and help and be there for somebody else who's struggling. It's the alcoholic woman talking to another alcoholic woman. That's where the real magic happens. And that's what happened for me. I didn't listen to anybody else, anybody who was not sober. I was like, you don't understand. It's when we really understand and we know what the feelings, even though the facts and the circumstances may be different, it's the feelings and the powerlessness and the experience we've had with alcohol.
Oh my gosh, I could not agree with you more. Well, for one thing about step 11, I definitely feel the same way. And that's such a weird thing to say because I love 12. Don't necessarily love 10 so much, but I do it because it's not a feelings program. But I love how I feel the day when I get my day started on my knees.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too is that someone with 6 hours, you guys, is the most effective person in the room, or 6 days. Because they look at Lydia and me, newcomers look at us and they go, 13 years? No way, you're lying. You've had a drink. Bull. But someone with 6 days, that's obtainable.
Yeah.
You're more effective. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Fred's story speaks for itself. I think we only have 15 more minutes. So Fred's story speaks for itself. We hope it strikes home to thousands like him. He had only felt the first nip of the ringer. Most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problems. Many doctors and psychiatrists agree that with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of a world-renowned hospital, recently made this statement to some of us. What you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, correct. As to two of you men whose stories I've heard, there is no doubt in my mind that you are 100% hopeless apart from divine help. Had you offered yourselves as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you if I had been able to avoid it. People like you are too heartbreaking. They're not a religious person. I have profound respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution. Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he or any other human can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power.
Yep. And that's why it's always simple prayer, God help me. It can be as simple as that.
Yep. Your will, not mine, be done.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that we get into we agnostics. All right. I love the fact that it talks about that most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled. It really goes back to the worse off you feel and the worse off your situation is, the brighter your light's going to shine. The more experiences you have, that means just the more women are going to be able to relate to you. And I thought that was crazy. When I was going through my divorce at 2 years sober, which a lot of you guys know my story, but I would remember being down on my knees one night going, God, your plan sucks. Sucks. And I know I'm going through a divorce so I can help other alcoholic women, but I don't want to. I don't want to be relatable about being a divorced person. And it turned out to be one of the best things that's ever happened to me outside my alcoholism. And so I just, again, me being arrogant, thinking that I know what God's plan is going to be at the end. And when I'm patient and just focus on helping other alcoholics and let God do his thing, it always turns out better than what I could have imagined.
Absolutely.
Any comments on that, Lydia? I kind of hijacked that.
I relate because when my dad passed suddenly, I had 20 months or something. And I remember I flew back to Dallas to be with my family, and this is kind of off topic, but the first thing I did was I got myself to a meeting. I was too upset to drive. I had somebody drive me there to the Preston group and drop me off. And then they came and picked me up. And I just said, my dad died yesterday, and people there really carried me through that difficult time in my life. But I remember feeling really angry at God during that time. And it does say, I can't remember where in the book, but it says, should we never cease to pray? So even I remember somebody said that to me in a meeting. They're like, even if you're mad at your higher power, at God, continue to pray, continue to talk to God. And I did. And my faith was really tested at that point. But I knew that drinking was not a solution. I knew that going to a meeting and staying sober was a solution. And I remember specifically seeking out other women who had lost a parent, who had lost a loved one in sobriety, because I wanted to hear from them how they did it and that they survived and that they were okay. And so, yeah, the experiences that we go through, whether when you're drinking or when you're sober.
It just doesn't feel good at the time.
Yeah, it sucks. There's no two ways about it.
No, it does suck.
And it's a we program, not a me program, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I went to treatment, I said, can I have my own room? And they said, no. They said, and they said it very politically correct, but they were like, we found that, alcoholism is a very isolating disease. And I was like, and it hit me. I was like, yeah, wow, I've been by myself. I didn't like to drink. I would drink with other people, but I couldn't wait till I could get home and drink how I really wanted to drink. And so it really, I remember I started crying then, because I was like, oh, it was like, it really put words to what I'd been feeling. I'd been feeling so alone. You don't have to do anything alone in this program. And I love women's meetings. I don't go into any mixed meetings anymore.
All about the women,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Mm-hmm. All right, we have a couple more minutes. Does anybody have anything that they want to talk? Thank you, Melinda. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about or share? All right, Lydia, are you done? Is there anything you want to say to end? Are you done?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for participating and showing up for your sobriety, today. And anytime I get asked to be of service, I say yes in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I couldn't have used it more, because I have been so focused on just getting through each day with kids and life and whatnot, and all the big feelings that come along with being in a pandemic. And it's like and the fact that now I'd never even heard of Zoom before March. It's like, Zoom, what? But I live in LA, and it's like just such a gift to be able to participate in this. So that is a gift that's come out of the pandemic. I really appreciate you asking me, Lisa, to come and participate today. And I think Maggie's House is awesome, and that each one of y'all is awesome, because it takes a brave person to say, I can't do this, I need help, and to go and stay at Maggie's House and do something that is so effing scary and so terrifying and so hard. And I really admire that, because I've been there and I still feel like that sometimes. So.
All right, well, let's close with the Lord's Prayer, you guys. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. It was really fun. It was awesome, as always.
We hope you've enjoyed this From the Vault re-release of the Magdalen House podcast. Tune in every first and third Wednesday for a new release from one of our 3 podcast series. To learn more about the Magdalen House and the services we offer, visit magdalenhouse.org or follow us on your favorite social media channels by searching for The Magdalen House.